So what I have here is the foot pedal that came with a cheap Chinese TIG welder, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a review of this and the problem that I had with it, and a quick look at a good quality foot pedal as well. So this actually has the top cover off, which would normally sit on here like this, and the reason the cover is off is because I never got this foot pedal to work properly. But at initial glance, it doesn't seem too badly made. It's reasonable thickness steel, and they've put a little bit of thought into putting some spring washers and things under some of the fasteners, and some noise filtering caps on the potentiometer, and a nice cable gland for stress relief, which is important for something that's going to be on the floor and kicked around and tripped over. They've got some rubber feet to stop it from sliding around on the floor as well. The cable is just a PVC cable, which isn't great when you're welding, because drop a bit of slag or molten steel on this and it's done. So I guess it just means you have to be a little bit more careful with this cable. Microphone style connector on the other end. All seems pretty reasonable at first, but had a number of problems with this and another foot pedal. And first thing is just how narrow it is for how tall. So imagine that when you're TIG welding, you're under the hood and you don't have great sort of peripheral vision, so you're under the table feeling around with your foot to get it on top of the pedal, and if it's quite tall and narrow, it's quite easy to kick over, so that can be a bit annoying. But also the height can be annoying, because it's quite nice to be able to have your heel on the floor and just use your toe to hit the pedal. So this is too high for that to happen. You've really got to lift your foot and place it on top of the pedal, so not ideal. And just those little annoyances add up and can be sort of distracting when you're trying to learn, or you want to use the foot pedal for a long period of time. But really the main issue with this foot pedal is it just didn't work because the tolerances aren't tight enough in their mechanism, and you'll see that when I go to push the top of the pedal down, you can hear it skipping around because this plastic wedge doesn't engage properly with the gear that's on the potentiometer. So it's effectively useless. I wasn't able to use it, and ended up having to get another pedal. But the other problem I had with this as well is one day I forgot to screw this the nut part of the connector onto the welder, and then went and tripped over the cable, and then this black plastic part ripped completely out of the metal body and kind of ruined that connector as well. So yeah, it doesn't seem like a great design to use on the connector end either. And on this one, it seems they didn't put it together properly, and the wires are starting to come out already. So yeah, just bad Chinese execution, I guess. So onto a good pedal. This is a HDP branded pedal, but I believe it's made by another company. And you can see this pedal is much wider, and at the lower end it's much thinner, so you can successfully rest your foot on the floor and put your toe on this and activate it. And I'm not going to pull this apart, but as I activate it, you can hear the micro switch clicks right away, which is nice, and then for its full travel is really quite smooth. No notchiness or jumping or skipping like the Chinese one. Nice bit of cable stress relief on the side here. This springy bit of plastic sort of stops too much jarring force going into the pedal there. Good bit of grip tape on both sides. So this pedal is much nicer to use than the Chinese pedal as well, so highly recommended. One thing that you probably can't really see in the video is this is not a PVC cable. This is, I'm guessing, as siliconized or rubberized coating on here, which actually reminds me quite a bit of the silicon lead on my Weller soldering iron. So this, I think, helps it stand up to the slag and grinding sparks and hot things that inevitably land on it when you're welding in a workshop. I've had this welder for probably a couple of years now, I guess, and I just pulled it out of the workshop and wiped it off with a rag, and despite all of its use, I can't really find any melt marks or any real nicks or damage to it, so I was quite impressed with that. And if I just go to the other end to pick up the connector, it's a connector type that I've not really seen before. It's got a nice cable gland at one end that securely holds the cable, and it seems to be largely one piece of plastic and screws in. And I don't know if I've not forgotten to screw this in or not tripped over it at the right time, but yeah, this has stood up pretty well to the abuse of the workshop environment as well, so I much prefer this connector. It's physically quite large too. It's much bigger than the smaller microphone connector on the Chinese welder, so my guess is this is going to last a long time, at least in my workshop. So back to the question of when you're shopping around for a welder, again, like with the torches, this is another thing to take into consideration, especially when you're learning. This pedal is much nicer, and I think you can buy these for about $160 to add on to your Chinese welder if you already have bought a welder. But between the torch and the pedal, that's an extra $300 of your money you have to spend to upgrade the accessories on your Chinese welder. When if you go with a name brand welder, you get these high quality accessories with the welder. So just something to take into consideration when you're comparing the prices between the name brand domestic welders and the cheaper Chinese welders.